In the heart of Kansas, 63-year-old farmer Walter Granger stood firm on the wooden porch of his weather-worn farmhouse, staring out at the golden waves of wheat that had fed for generations of his family. Developers came. Politicians called. Offers reached into the millions. But Walter never wavered. "No one's buying this land," he'd tell them, "not while I'm still breathing." He wasn't just clinging to soil. He was guarding legacy, memory, and pride. Living with him was his 23-year-old granddaughter, Leah, a recent college graduate who had returned after the sudden loss of her parents. She dreamed of modernizing the farm, bringing in new systems, making things easier. But she also understood that her grandfather's grip on the past came from something deeper than stubbornness. Then, one morning, a new letter arrived, sleek, official, and sealed with the mark of the President of the United States. Walter opened it slowly, smirked, and muttered, "Another offer, ... probably bigger." But something about this one felt different. "Doesn't matter," Walter muttered, tossing the envelope aside. "You should at least read it," Leah said, gently. "I don't need to read anything," he replied, eyes locked on the land that had defined his life. But this time was different. The man behind the letter wasn't just another developer. What he had to say would challenge everything Walter believed. For days, the letter sat on the kitchen table, gathering dust, untouched. Leah kept glancing at it until finally she asked, "Grandpa, what if it's not about money? What if it's something more?" Walter didn't flinch. "It's always about money," he said. But Leah opened it anyway. It wasn't an offer, it was a handwritten invitation to a town hall meeting just 2 towns over, signed by President Donald J. Trump himself. "Mr. Granger, I respect your love for your land," it read, "but please hear me out, just once." Leah looked up. "He's not ordering. He's asking." Walter looked at her, then at the envelope. He said nothing, but his silence spoke volumes. The next morning, he came down in his best boots and a freshly ironed shirt. "I'm not saying I agree with him," he said quietly, "but I'll listen." Leah smiled gently. "You're doing the right thing." They drove 3 hours to a small auditorium buzzing with locals. Security was tight, but Walter's name was on the list. He sat silently in the front row, face unreadable. "Why now?" Leah whispered. No answer. Maybe he didn't know. Moments later, a staffer approached. "Mr. Granger, the president will see you privately before the event." Walter blinked privately. Leah squeezed his hand. "Listen." In a quiet room, flanked by American flags, President Trump stood waiting. He extended a hand. "Mr. Granger, it's an honor." Walter hesitated, then shook it. "Let's not waste time." Trump smiled. "I like that." But instead of making a pitch, Trump asked about the farm. "How many acres?" 300. "Water source?" 2 wells and rain when God's willing." Trump nodded. "You remind me of my grandfather, stubborn, loyal, grounded." Walter didn't smile, but he listened. Then Trump leaned in. "I'm not trying to take your land, I'm trying to protect it." Walter's eyes narrowed. "From what?" Trump slid over a folder. Inside were pipeline plans aimed straight through Walter's fields, plans he'd never seen, funded by foreign investors. "Coming with or without your consent," Trump said. Walter's jaw tightened. "They said it was for condos." Trump shook his head. "They lied. They're leaning on senators already. But I can stop it if I have your public support." That night, back home, Walter paced the porch, the weight heavy. Leah asked, "What are you going to do?" He stared. "At the horizon? I don't know." He didn't trust politicians. But Trump hadn't lied. The documents were real. Alone, he could be bulldozed. But with Trump, he might save the land. Still, the fear of being seen as a sellout gnawed at him. Leah sat beside him. Sometimes holding on looks like letting go. That afternoon, Walter walked his fields, wheat brushing his jeans. He knelt, touched the soil, and memories returned his father teaching him to plant, his mother waving from the porch, little Leah running barefoot. This land wasn't dirt, it was legacy. 2 weeks later, a black SUV rolled up the dusty drive. The president had returned. Trump stepped out alone. This time, no cameras, no press, just a quiet, personal visit. "Just us," he said. Walter nodded and welcomed him inside. Over coffee, the two men talked like old friends about long harvests. The ache of drought, the cost of loyalty, and what it truly means to belong to something greater than yourself. Eventually, Walter asked, "Why does it matter so much to you?" Trump looked him in the eye and replied, "Because America's backbone is built on people like you, and if we lose that, we lose everything." Walter sat in thoughtful silence, then stood. "Come with me," he said. He led Trump to an old barn, its walled, weathered by time, its walls etched with stories. Hanging inside was a faded photo of Walter's grandfather shaking hands with President Eisenhower. "My family's always stood our ground," Walter said quietly, "but maybe standing doesn't always mean saying no." Trump looked at the photo, then back at Walter, and spoke 7 words that shifted everything. "Help me protect this land with you. Not for you, not instead of you. With you." Walter didn't answer right away, but those words stayed with him, long after the barn door creaked shut. That night, Walter sat at the kitchen table and signed a document, not a deed of sale, but a partnership agreement. Kept full ownership of the land, while Trump used his federal influence to block the pipeline. The Granger farm would now serve as a national pilot site for sustainable American agriculture. By morning, word had spread. Through Oak Ridge, some accused Walter of selling out, but when he stood at the town hall beside Trump and said, "I didn't sell my land, I chose to defend it," the room erupted in applause. Even his critics nodded, realizing he hadn't surrendered. Had taken a stand? The farm safe? Leah proposed a bold idea: solar panels, drought-resistant crops, a farmer's cope. Walter smiled. "It's your turn now." Together they blended tradition with innovation, transforming the land into a blueprint for the future. But just as hope bloomed, a tornado ripped through the area, crops damaged, fences down, the barn nearly destroyed. Walter sat in stunned silence until Leah gently said, "We'll rebuild." Then, help arrived from Washington, from nearby towns, from strangers online. 2 days later, a helicopter landed in their field. Trump stepped out with volunteers and supplies. "I said we'd protect it. I meant it." Walter moved, shook. His hand. "You didn't have to." Trump replied, "Neither did you." Weeks later, a stronger solar-powered barn stood tall. New irrigation systems, advanced tools, and young apprentices, learning the future of farming, all rooted in one man's refusal to give up. Standing in the doorway of the new barn, Walter whispered, "We made it." Leah smiled, holding his hand. "We made it." Walter was later invited to speak at the Kansas State Fair, where a massive crowd gathered to hear his story, a story of struggle, tradition, pride, and an unexpected partnership. As he finished, he quoted Trump's handwritten words, "Help me protect this land with you." The crowd rose in thunderous applause. Backstage, Trump clapped him on the back and said, "You're the kind of man this country needs." Walter chuckled. Too old for politics, but he knew he wasn't too old for purpose. Their bond became a symbol of unity, old and new, red and blue standing together for the land. Inspired, Leah launched the Heartland Initiative, a nonprofit dedicated to helping small farmers resist predatory development. She spoke across the country, but always said it began with her stubborn grandfather who refused to sell. Years passed. Walter grew older, but each fall, he still rode his tractor through the golden fields. On his final harvest, standing in the warm glow of sunset, he whispered, "Thank you," to the wind. He passed peacefully that winter. His will was simple: keep the land, keep the promise. Today, Leah runs the Granger farm and supports dozens of others like it. In the farmhouse, a note framed on the wall reads, "Help me protect this land with you," signed by Trump. Below it hangs a photo Walter shaking hands with the president. And outside, 300 acres of proud, thriving land remain untouched. Because once a farmer refused to sell until someone spoke not with greed, but with respect. And 7 words changed everything.